Let's talk about every social media socialist, every comment section communist favorite subject, Karl Marx. Now, I want to give the mic to Brother Jordan Peterson here, who is going to do a much better job than I can in describing exactly who this man Karl Marx was. A man who is a hero to the far left, to the so-called liberals, the individuals who see themselves as creating this sort of utopia where boys are getting their genitalia cut off and girls are getting double mastectomies at the age of 12 and 13, that sort of utopia. So let me give the mic to JP and we will break things down as need be. Let's get into it.
That we see. Like, this thing's been around since the mid 1800s, and it's taken over almost everything, especially college campuses. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the first communists, let's say, the Russians, let's say, for the sake of argument, they were much less reprehensible philosophically than today's Marxists. And the reason for that was, well, they had a utopian vision, and not that that's necessarily a good thing, but they didn't necessarily know that it was a bad thing, right? And the old aristocratic European structure was crumbling, and there'd been a terrible war, and the Tsarist regime was, well, compared to the communist regime, it was heaven on earth, but it had its problems. And so and even as Nietzsche said, that communism would be worth it as an experiment. But he also said, and this was in Will to Power, that hundreds of millions of people would die as a consequence, which is one of the most remarkable prophecies, I think, that have ever been uttered by anyone ever. Okay, so it's attractive, it's utopian, but then there's the dark side of it, right? Which means everyone who has more than you got it by stealing it from you.
Yes. I often bring this point up. The woke ideology is founded on envy. It's founded on wanting what others have by force. It is actually a covert narcissistic sort of expression of personality when you really look at it. That's why it's eat the rich and take these people out, and those are the oppressors and we are the oppressed and we want to overthrow them. Every dynamic is about power with them. Even how they organize themselves as far as who is on the highest of their hierarchy is the person who is, the most downtrodden, the most oppressed, the one who's got all the labels of them on them. They're not only black, but they're black and trans, but they're not only trans, but they have no gender. They not only have no gender, but they also, have no legs, and also they're a dwarf. Like, as many markers as you can get possible is going to put you the highest on that ranking system, and it's all about power. Instead of getting power through let's say, a social sort of way, which is I'm going to build a product, I'm going to build a service, I'm going to be useful to my society and then be elevated. They say we're going to use force. We're going to manipulate and shame our way into those positions. We want the job because we deserve it, not because we are actually adequate, not because we are qualified, but instead because we want it. You have it, we want it. It's the same third wave feminism mentality. Right? It's not to be equal. Equality is already there. No, we want to be better. We want to dominate you. So, yeah. But then again, what did I know?
And that it really appeals to the Cain-like element of the human spirit, right? Everyone who has more than me got it in a manner that was corrupt, and that justifies not only my envy, but my actions to level the field, so to speak, and to look virtuous while doing it. And so there's a tremendous philosophy of resentment that I think is driven now also by a very pathological anti-human ethos that you also see at the base of much of the environmentalist movement. It's not like we're not doing some stupid things to the planet. Like what we're doing to the oceans, for example, is reprehensible beyond comprehension. But, I've heard environmentalists state quite straightforwardly that human beings are a cancer on the planet. It's like, if someone says that to you, you should move away from that person very, very quickly, because that statement is genocidal in its spiritual origin. And so I think there's a whole cluster of unexamined motives of resentment that primarily drive the resurgence of the Marxism. But it's also a consequence of the poor, the biased education that our children receive. You know, they know a bit about the Second World War and about the Nazis, but they don't know anything about what happened in the Soviet Union and China. Like often in universities, and I teach a personality course, it's like that's not where you should be learning about the 6 million Ukrainians who died of starvation in the 1930s, but most of my students have never heard of any of that. It's like, what the hell? We fought a whole Cold War about that. We damn near annihilated the planet because of it. And all of a sudden it's an inconvenient for the neo-Marxists to notice that the regimes of Stalin
and there's always this excuse of, well, we just haven't done it the right way. No. The reason it has not been done the right way is because there is no right way. There is no purely socialist, communistic society that will work. And I forget who said this, might be Dr. Godsad, who said, Godsad, what a name that guy has. I think it's him who said, it's great theory, wrong species, right? In essence, that ants are the most socialistic species that we know, where everything is a collective. They all are at the exact same place, and there's one essential. It really looks more like a monarchy, right? Because they have one queen, and they're all subservient to that queen. And I guess bees would fit into that same category. But for humans, it doesn't work because we're not created in such a way. Equality and this idea of fairness, I think, are seen through the wrong perspective, because we want fairness in the lens of anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can do too. But that's not necessarily the case with humans. We're not all made for the same utility. I have very different skill sets than Michael Jordan, right? Than Pele. I know that's taking it way back. Let me bring it Messi, right? I have very different skill sets from those individuals. I have a different genetic makeup. I have, a different temperament. I have different gifting. And so it almost takes away from the individual when you try to force everybody to be the same thing. It's like this dynamic of masculine, feminine, and women need to be just like men and even better than men and what men are, as opposed to finding what is it that you as an individual are actually made for and crafted for. And more likely than not, when you're in the feminine, you have those feminine qualities. And then those, obviously will paint the lens of kind of your worldview and what you end up creating, what you value, how you move through life. And as a man, vice versa. Yes, there are generalizations, but there's a reason why we have generalizations, because that's the average. And so with Marxism, it tries to make everybody so equal that it actually makes everybody suppressed and poor. I lived in was born in a socialist country, technically speaking, but it was really a dictatorship. We had the same president for 26 years, almost 30 years running, a man who continued to change the Constitution. And so the winners in those environments are the government. There's a large government, that is overseeing the poor class, which is pretty much everybody that lives there. And if you want to be wealthy, you have to be connected directly to government. There is no true private, sector in the way there is in open free market capitalistic societies, which most of Europe is, even though people like to say, well, there's socialism there. First and foremost, even the highest tax places like the Belgiums and things of that nature, it is still a capitalistic system. It is still free market. Even China had to introduce zones that are free market as a communistic country in order for them to actually catch up with us monetarily, or to catch up with the rest of the world who was moving forward, with India, etc., who are moving into a more democratic system where there was free markets and things of that nature. So
of Stalin and Mao were brutal beyond comprehension. So how about if we don't talk about it? So there's lots of corruption that's driving this, but a huge part of it is resentment. And I think the worst emotions are resentment. The worst actions are resentment, deceit, and arrogance. And you get those three working together, boy, you got a force that you better be careful with.
Do you think it's dying off or
What's
going
that?
away? Do you think Marxism is dying off or going away at all, or do you think it's getting stronger?
I think that what's happened is that it's transmutated into this postmodernism and identity politics, which was really, really devious, and that was a consequence of the French intellectuals, mostly Derrida and Foucault. But it's not going away. What's happened instead is that it's taken a new strategic tack, and it's one that no one really envisioned. What it's doing is taking over the administration of mid-level bureaucracies everywhere. So it's not so much a threat at the highest level of political organization, but that isn't necessarily where much of the power over individuals resides. It resides in these smaller political structures, sub-political structures, like.
That's a great point. I've heard this in corporate, where even DEI programs and like the literature and things of that nature that they would pump into there. There's a guy by the name of Robbie Starbuck, and he has been doing incredible work as far as just going into corporations and basically exposing to like the CEOs and et cetera. It's like, you guys are losing all this money with these programs. They're actually hurting you financially. But also, many of these executives have not been exposed to the literature that they are, disseminating within their own employees. And so you might have like your middle management, your supervisors, et cetera, that are super, super woke and are trying to run their power games over other people. And so they delight in that. And so that makes sense what he's saying, which is those individuals are then going to be the ones who kind of make it hard to be anything other than what their own ideology is. For example, if you're a conservative or even just voted for Donald Trump in 2024, you were liable to, in 2016, 2020, you were liable to get fired from a job, to get, misplaced, to be mistreated or whatever it was, simply because of your political stance. 2024, it's shifted a little bit, but most people just lost family members and friends and things of that nature. Grandmamas and aunties and sisters and cousins who just couldn't help the fact that you think different and that you actually want what's best for them as well as you. And, your main focus and concern is not unaliving millions of babies a year, that type of thing. But I digress. So that is a powerful point, because again, hearing from Robbie Starbuck, who actually has been one of the main reasons why, from Walmart to Harley Davidson and Boeing, a multitude of these companies have cut these DEI programs, and they were so afraid to before, because the reason they put them into their institution is because of the fear of being considered as racist. And I know how big that used to be in the Bay Area, where there's such a fear within these white liberals of being marked as a racist that they would do anything. They give money to these BLM scammers. This guy, Ibrahim X. Kendi, who wrote the book, How to Be Anti-White. I did an entire video. I'm about to do a second video on him. A complete scammer. He took $40 million and did absolutely nothing with it. Jack Dorsey gave him 10 million. This person gave few million. And he was supposed to build in the communities and create this. This man produced 2 research papers that entire time with $40 million. He didn't do a damn skippity scap. And even people in his own space were saying his book was crap. So what are we doing here? But again, as long as we don't call it out, it will continue to perpetuate. We can't be the silent majority anymore.
School boards, for example, or in Canada right now, our Law Society in Ontario has made it mandatory for lawyers to produce a statement of principles that they provide a template for. They tell you what your damn statement of principles should be. And they're basically equity, diversity, and inclusivity statements. And if you don't write out your statement of principles, declaiming your agreement with these principles and simultaneously, essentially admitting that you're a racist, then you don't get your license. So we're fighting a big war about that right now in Ontario. We might even win. It looks like we might win. You never know. But and it's also partly because ordinary people are too complacent about the mid-level bureaucrats who rule over them. We're willing to allow those relatively small positions of power to be taken over by groups that are very good at doing that sort of thing. And we need to wake up to that, because it's seriously not good. And it's very difficult to fight back against. So
you've also written that throughout your 20s, you were a Marxist.
Yes.
Okay, so I didn't know they were going to do a little remix. I didn't know they were going to throw in our brother Thomas Sowell. Okay, brother Sowell, we love brother Sowell. We love, around here, we love intellects, okay? We love intelligence meets bravery and truth. We love that. So let's get into it, brother. So I did not know you about to be popping up on pop. You just popped up on us like that.
What did that to you? Was that Fair Harvard's work?
No, heavens no. That was when I was 20 years old. That was when I first came across some stuff by Marx. And what he said seemed to explain the world around me. And one of the reasons is that, like many kids then and now, they don't really get any alternative explanation. And so it's like you have to have a candidate to be the candidate.
So what was, you grow up in Harlem, you went to Howard before going to Harvard.
Yeah.
So you're largely in a black world, an African-American world. When you say Marx explained the world around you, do you mean to say that he explained the world of segregation?
No. But for example, my first job was as a Western Union messenger. I was 16 years old. My first full-time job. And I used to, on some evenings, come home instead of taking the subway, which was a nickel in those days. I would splurge and take the Fifth Avenue bus, which was 15 cents. If I was feeling,
You've gotten a good tip.
Yeah. And so we'd start out from 23rd Street and go all the way up Fifth Avenue, past all the glittering places, and we would turn left at 57th Street and go out past more glittering places, including Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And then we'd turn up around Columbus Circle, up Broadway, and then out to Riverside Drive, all the fancy stuff there. And then at 135th Street, we'd come in off a viaduct, and immediately there'd be the tenements. And of course, this is where I lived. And I went, what is this? And Marx seemed to explain that.
Got it. So what converted you? You graduate from Harvard.
So what he was explaining there basically is he's seeing the contrast between the haves and the have-nots, and the explanation of the Marxist or Marx himself is that this is because of capitalism, right? Which is a lie. It's a falsehood. Simple as that. Capitalism or free market capitalism, because when we oftentimes hear the word capitalism, we are viewing a crony capitalism, which is actually politically driven or motivated. True capitalism is a free enterprise. It is people working in the midst of people, not with this bureaucracy, not with these layers of government in them. That's when you start to become a socialistic society, right? When you start to put the crony element of it, because that corruption, even the monopolizing and things of that nature that may happen. Look, in nature, the best is going to win. The one who occupies the space is going to occupy the space. Simple as that. And so if you want to outdo the next individual who might be doing the very same thing, create a better product. And that innovation is pushed through a true, pure capitalistic society. I know it irks you to hear the word capitalism. I know, trust me, we've been conditioned to believe that capitalism is a cuss word, but there's a reason why the rest of the communistic, socialistic world is looking to break into America, if not find their way here, at least legally. It's because where they're from, that system does not work for the people. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't incentivize you. Now, socialism sells you this false hope of you. If you don't get out your bed this morning, you just lay your ass in bed all day and don't do nothing. You're going to get the same thing as the dude who goes out there and picks berries all day, or the dude who goes out there and builds a machine. All of y'all are going to get the same thing. So don't worry, you ain't got to do nothing. It's a very attractive prospect for an individual who wants to do a little bit for a lot of it, and views everybody else who's getting something for the work that they did, this is obviously the ills and the evils of capitalism. That's what that is. I will not apologize for being a capitalist. Absolutely not. Because I understand that coming from a socialistic country, this is the best system. Is it perfect? There is no perfect, because it's humans working every system. But as far as free trade, a market where the people are trading goods and services amongst one another is the best system, period. It allows for innovation. When people are actually motivated by creating higher profits, and they create bigger and better things. Most to all, solutions such as cures and things of that nature came from a means of how do I create something that helps as many people to sell as much as possible, make as much money. We think that's evil. It's only evil when it's now The money is the end and the means in itself, which is why, government systems, when they start to occupy, they don't offer you a service. They don't offer you a damn thing besides yappery. They don't offer you anything besides what they're going to do for you. Eventually, they sell you the same thing. They call them a pulpit pimp, right? A dude who's at that pulpit in a church who is really pimping you out for that money in the basket. They give you the same false hope in the future, as opposed to, here's a product now. Is it working? Is it helping? Fantastic. You buy it. Boom, bada bing, bam, boom. Right? If there's no value there, I'm not buying it. Therefore, they don't make any money. Tough.
A Marxist. Mm-hmm. You remain a Marxist throughout your 20s, and you've written that you had a summer job in Washington in 1969.
And I just heard in my head one of y'all say, no, but that's not true, because in a capitalist society, it's not the best product that wins. It's the most. Look, if you have the best marketed product and somebody else has a better product, if your product is marketed better, you're going to win. It's simple as that. So you might not have the best product, but if your product is marketed, so I suggest you learn how to market your product. Make the best product. It's like for me, right? If I, let's say, have the most incredible content, right? I got dynamic content, fire content, extremely valuable, helpful content, entertaining, all those aspects, but I never put it out, then it's not making its impact. Simple as that. I'm not going to get any benefits off of that. The channel doesn't continue to grow. Y'all don't continue to show up. And continue to show up and continue to show up. And now I can't serve the market in any type of way. I'm not able to create revenue streams through this if I don't put myself out there and use different means to do so. Get on every single platform and do this and do that. But that takes work. So it's easier to just be a socialist in your head, though, because every socialist I've met lives in a capitalistic utopia.
1960.
1960, I beg your pardon. In 1960, that helped to, or that just changed your views on economics. Well, explain that.
I was still a Marxist after taking Milton Friedman's course. But one summer in the government was enough to let me say, this government is really not the answer. I mean, that is...
Milton Friedman didn't cure you, but the federal government did.
The federal government did. So never say the federal government doesn't do anything.
So what was it about the job?
Well, my job was to study minimum wage setting in Puerto Rico. And of course, I discovered that as they kept raising the minimum...
Department of Labor, or
yes.
You're collecting statistics for something? Okay.
Yeah,
all right, got it.
For a report. Right. And I noticed that as they kept raising the minimum wage, the employment kept going down. And of course, economics was saying that was why, but there were two theories. The unions said that the reason it was going down was that there were hurricanes came through, a series of hurricanes during the time they collected the data, and that it destroyed the sugar cane in the field, so there was less required to be processed. And so the question is, which of those is right? And I thought, I'd been trained in Chicago, that if there are two different theories, there must be some factual thing that would be different, at least in principle. So I spent the whole summer trying to figure out how would I test this. And finally I came in one day and announced to the little group there in the office that I have it. That what we need are statistics on the amount of sugar cane standing in the field before the hurricane came through. And I'm waiting for the congratulations, and I can see looks of shock in the room, like this idiot has stumbled on something that will ruin us all, And I realized I was concerned as to whether this law was beneficial or not beneficial to low-income people. They were concerned because this law was providing 1/3 of the income of the U.S. Department of Labor. And once you begin to see that the government agencies have their own self-interest, quite aside from whatever they're theoretically supposed to be doing.
So they were being...
That's why in California, homelessness, so long as the Democratic plantation is in charge, homelessness will forever be a thing. Because there's too much money, too many government jobs. Gavin Newsom gets to stand up there and say, look how many jobs we created under my economy. Yeah, jobs in what? Billions of dollars given to what? Homelessness. And yet it has never been solved, right? For a problem that's getting worse progressively the more money that's thrown into it. But I digress. That's a story for another time. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Till the next time. Peace. I
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's night. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a